I've almost exhausted the Rosh Hashanah topics of the past couple of years. I'm not yet holding at the point that we need to repeat. We've given a shiur about the lamdus of blowing shofar, the mitzvahs, the blowing or the hearing. We also had a shiur once on a Thursday night all about the menu of Rosh Hashanah. If you're allowed to fast, should you refrain from eating meat? Is there a mitzvah of joy on Rosh Hashanah? But this morning we have a different topic altogether. And there was an Av Bezdin in Vilna. His name was Rabbi Fastvaler, or Pasval, from the city of Pasval. And Rabbi Avram Abele Pasvaler was a young man at the times of the Vilna Gaon. He was born in about the year 1762, same time as Rabbi Kiva Eger and the Chassam Sofer, the same times. And shortly after the passing of the Vilna Gaon, he was appointed as the Av Bezdin of Vilna. The Av Bezdin of Vilna. And he was a Groiser Gaon. In Lubavitch, he's famous for a story that he once met up with the Tzemach Tzedek. He was older than the Tzemach Tzedek by quite a bit, and they were speaking and learning. And he was a Litvak, but he wasn't a Misnagid, as the following story will express. He was so nispol that Tzemach Tzedek was a young man. He knew so much. He said, "Wie kommt euch so viel? Seid ihr doch ein junger Mann? Young man, how do you know so much?" And Tzemach Tzedek said, "I have a bracha from my Zayde, the Alter Rebbe, that whatever I learn once, I don't forget." It's interesting because the Alter Rebbe offered the Tzemach Tzedek another bracha of Hatzlacha in learning, and that he didn't take. He wanted to toil with his own effort. And later in life, he regretted because he could have toiled above and beyond the bracha of the Alter Rebbe. But apparently, he did accept the bracha for Zikaron. So Rabbi Abele told the Tzemach Tzedek, "I'd like to tell you a story. I was by the Vilna Gaon when a number of Misnagdim entered with a ksav to sign a chedim against the Chassidim. And they asked me to sign. I was a young man, but even as a young man, Rabbi Abele was a recognized Goin. And they asked me to sign, and I didn't want. And they said, even the Vilna Gaon, who's like an angel of Hashem, I'm doima l'malach Hashem tzvois, he signed." And Rabbi Abele said the famous answer about the Akedah. When it came to Shechting Yitzchak, the Eibishter himself spoke to Avram. When it came to saving Yitzchak, the Eibishter sent a malach. When it comes to saving a Yid from Tzadus, you can hear from a malach. When it comes to harming a Jew, you have to hear from the Eibishter himself. So that's Rabbi Abele Pasvaler. And there's a certain halach he said in regards to Rosh Hashanah, which mamash shook the boat in the halachic world. And that's the following. There's a din that on Rosh Chodesh, you miss Ya'alav Yavai, you have to be chayzer, right? You miss Ya'alav Yavai, you got to go back by davening. And that's true by Shachris, it's true by Mincha. It's not true by Ma'ariv. By Ma'ariv, ein machzir nois. It's a Gemara in Brachas that says by Ma'ariv you don't have to go back. And the reason the Gemara says is because Bezdin is not Mekadesh the Chodesh at night. Bezdin only says Mekudesh by day. And therefore the night of Rosh Chodesh, it's not really Rosh Chodesh. Bezdin wouldn't be able to pronounce it as Rosh Chodesh. And therefore you don't have to redo Shemoneh Esrei. It's not really Rosh Chodesh. So it says Rabbi Abele, Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh. So on Rosh Hashanah, we know there's a din. If you're davening and you don't say Amelech HaKadosh, you say Okel HaKadosh, you have to go back. Unless you remember Toch Kedei Dibur and you quickly fix it up. But if not, you have to be chayzer. You have to return to the beginning of Shemoneh Esrei. We paskin that by Okel HaKadosh. Baruch Hashem, the other things are Chrein or L'chayim, Micha Moicha. We don't paskin that way, although it was a debate in the times of the Rishonim. Some Rishonim said that that you should mamish be chayzer on everything. The Rosh paskins differently, and that's the halacha that we don't go back for the other things. Melech Oyev Tzedakah Mishpat is its own Bazunter Parsha. But as far as Rosh Hashanah, you don't say that. The only thing you would go back is for a Kel HaKodesh. Comes Rabbi Abel and says that the first night, Rosh Hashanah, if you're davening and you accidentally say a Kel HaKodesh and you realize a minute later, a few seconds later, it's okay, you don't have to go back. It's just like missing Ya'ala V'Yova, the first night Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh. Ein mekadshin es hachodesh ela b'yom. You have the same logic that we apply to Rosh Chodesh. It's not really Rosh Chodesh, which means not really Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the new month. So therefore, if you missed Kel HaKodesh, not a problem. You don't have to be chayzer. This was the psak that he said, which was a major chiddush. No one ever said it before him. No one ever made such a distinction between the night of Rosh Hashanah, even the first night, and the other tefillas. So let's have a look at this for a moment. So number one, we just start with the din. This is the Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Shabbos, but it's true about Yom Tov too. Misha Tor Lispalol Kol HaTfilah Shel Choel B'Shabbos. If someone accidentally does the entire weekday Shemona Esrei on Shabbos, V'loi Hizkir Klal Inyan Kedusha Shel Shabbos B'Tfilosah. Someone davens on Shabbos, whether it's Ma'ariv, Shachris, or Musaf, or Mincha, if he does a complete weekday Shemona Esrei with no mention of Shabbos, Lo Yotze Yedei Chavos. You're not Yotze. Even though we know that really on Shabbos and Yom Tov, one in theory would daven all Yud Ches brachas, it's just that because of Tircha de Tzibura, in order to shorten the davening, ironically, to shorten the davening, we do a shorter Shemona Esrei. It's shortened the davening. But maybe Taka davening became so long everywhere else, at least Shemona Esrei, they give us a break. And that's why there's a din that if on Shabbos or Yom Tov you accidentally start saying Atachoin, you're supposed to finish the bracha and then continue the Shabbos or the Yom Tov Shemona Esrei. So maybe you might think if you did the complete weekday Shemona Esrei, nicht so gefährlich, because I should have davened this anyways. Says Alter Rebbe, Lo Yotze Yedei Chavosai. If there's no mention of Shabbos and the truth and Yom Tov is the same thing, then you blew it. If it's tzarich lachzor l'spalot tefillah shel Shabbos, you got to redo it. Aval im hiski, if you did mention shel Shabbos b'soich yud ches, if you daven the weekday, and somehow you mention Shabbos, let's say you threw in a Ya'ala V'Yova and you were saying you mentioned Shabbos, or somehow you mentioned Shabbos b'soich the yud ches, afal pi shaloi kavah l'Shabbos bracha b'fnei atzma. Even though Shabbos didn't get its own bracha, which it's supposed to, right? Regularly on Shabbos, we have the three beginning, the three at the end, and then you have the Mekadesh Shabbos in the middle, right? Even if you didn't do that, you did the whole Yud Ches brachas of the weekday, but somehow you stuck in Shabbos, you gave Shabbos a mention, Yotze Yedei Chavosai Yoyotze. And the same thing Yom Tov. So, b'diavad you're Yotze if you made a mention. If not, you're not Yotze. And l'chayra, that applies by every Shabbos, every Yom Tov. What would happen though the first night Rosh Hashanah? Reb Avila Pasvaler is discussing if you mix up Hamelech HaKodesh or Kel HaKodesh the first night. But let's discuss a more general issue. What if the first night Rosh Hashanah someone davened the completely weekday Shemona Esrei? Do I apply the halach of number one, you're not Yotze? Or do I say, no, since Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh, just like Rosh Chodesh, if you miss Ya'ala V'Yova and you made no mention of Rosh Chodesh, it's fine. Because Rosh Chodesh isn't pronounced until the day. So too by Rosh Hashanah, it's Rosh Chodesh, it's not pronounced until the day. So if at night you did Shel Choel, it should work. And the truth is, look in number 2. This is the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yoina. In the end of Masechta Brachos, you have the Rif. On the Rif, you have the commentary known as Rabbeinu Yoina, or the students of Rabbeinu Yoina. And in it, they bring a machlokes about this very question. Look in the 3rd line. Kosav Harav Rabbeinu Yoina. This is the students quoting the Rebbe Beperek Tfil. I'm sorry. This is the Beis Yosef quoting Rabbeinu Yoina. But like I mentioned, many believe it's written by the students of Rabbeinu Yoina. But no chilik for now. This is the Beis Yosef on the tour quoting the Rabbeinu Yoina. The Perek Tfilos HaShachar, it's in the 4th Perek of Brachos. We're in number 2, the 5th line. Sheyesh Eimim Samtaina, the Yom to show Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is different than Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, and a Shabbos. Kiven Shetolu B'Rosh Chodesh, since Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh, It's only Yom Tov because it's Rosh Chodesh is the beginning of the new month. Im Tov, one word, V'loy hiskish shal Yom Tov ba'arvis. And the entire night Shemona Esrei, there's no mention of Yom Tov. Ein machzirin oisai. Different than Ma'ariv of Pesach, or Shavuos, or Sukkot. The other Yom Tovim, Ma'ariv is the same as Shachris, Musaf, and Mincha. But Rosh Hashanah, there's a special ingredient here. The Rosh Chodesh, we should judge it like Rosh Chodesh. That's the first opinion. It is Rosh Chodesh, just like Rosh Chodesh. If you miss Ya'alav V'Yovah at night, it's okay because Rosh Chodesh really is only announced, expressed by day. So to Rosh Hashanah. So if you daven the weekday, it would be good. It would be the only Yom Tov or Shabbos that if you completely miss the Shabbos or the Yom Tov, you're still Yaitz to the Shemona Esrei, because it's the night of Rosh Hashanah, it's the night of Rosh Chodesh, it's not really yet Rosh Chodesh. Fine. Says Rabbeinu Yoina v'nuchaloyim, but I could tell you no. Sha'af al pi shetolu b'Rosh Chodesh. It's true. Rosh Hashanah depends on Rosh Chodesh, obviously, but kivan shehu Yom Tov, it's a Yom Tov though. Are you allowed to do malacha the first night of Rosh Hashanah? Because listen, since we only announce Rosh Chodesh by day, so Rosh Hashanah only starts by day. God forbid, you ever heard such a thing? Chas v'shalom, you can't do malacha the night of Rosh Hashanah. You see, Rosh Chodesh, if Bezdin announces Rosh Chodesh the next day, in what way do we say retroactively Rosh Chodesh the night before? Like, for what? What? It doesn't really have much halachic significance. But on Rosh Hashanah, if Bezdin's going to be Mekadesh the Chodesh the next day, then it's Rosh Hashanah retroactively from the night before. He doesn't throw in that idea, but the Chayr, that's part of this. He says, Kivan Shul Yom Tov, the night of Rosh Hashanah. Mitzvahs Yom Tov Alima Tfei, Mitzvahs Yom Tov is powerful. Sheyesh Ba Isur Malacha. You can't do Malacha. That means it's Rosh Hashanah. So how could you, if you said Shemona Esrei, completely Shel Choyel, the Yud Chesbar, and no mention of Rosh Hashanah, how could you be yotzing and pull out the argument, well, it's Rosh Chodesh and that only happens by day? No, Rosh Hashanah is equally at night than by day. And I'm just throwing in the spice. So Chayra, once Bezin Mekadesh the next day, as far as the Yom Tov, it goes completely retroactively. Lashenk and Rosh Chodesh, there isn't really much to say it goes retroactively for.
We also,
at least not for Isur Malacha, which is the argument of Rabbeinu Yoina.
Rosh Hashanah, we say the Yom Tov Mikra Kodesh, so it has some type of Yom Tov.
Most definitely, yeah.
Element
Yeah.
to it.
And Bechlal, on Rosh Hashanah, we don't make any mention that it's Rosh Chodesh.
Yeah.
The reason is la'arv of the Satan, to confuse the Satan, but you'll see that it actually, what? But it has halachic significance. He says like this: Mashe ein came b'Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh has no Isur Malacha. Okay, women have a minute not to do Malacha, but it's not Asur b'Malacha. The shaila of the Isur of fasting might have any roots in the Chumash Rosh Chodesh, so maybe that might go retroactive. Maybe, but there's no Isur Malacha. The word of Rabbeinu Yoina is Isur Malacha reigns supreme, and by Rosh Hashanah it's equal by night to day. And then he throws in ubetfila gamkein einonu maskirin Rosh Chodesh klal ela inyan Yom Tov. He throws in this argument that by Rosh Hashanah it's Taka Rosh Chodesh, but you make no mention during the tefillas. Now I would say, come on, that's the la'arv of the Satan. But he says no. Rabbeinu Yoina is saying that has halachic significance. It's almost like Rosh Hashanah, therefore is not similar to it's not judged like Rosh Chodesh. And therefore he says, if you're going to compare the davening of the night of Rosh Hashanah to another davening, don't compare it to a regular night of Rosh Chodesh. Compare it to the night of Pesach, or Shavuos, or Sukkot, a regular Yom Tov. So he says, Yoser Yeshlanu Lodin Yoser. It makes more sense to judge it and compare it like a Yom Tov, like the Ma'ariv of Shavuos and Sukkot and Pesach, where of course you go back. Milodin Yoser, instead of comparing it, Kamei Rosh Chodesh. And therefore he says, Ve'im lo yizkir ba'arvis men Yom Tov, if you went through the first night of Rosh Hashanah, no mention of Yom Tov, machzirin, so you go back. So Rabbeinu Yoina or the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yoina are bringing a major debate, a whopping debate. And the debate circles around the night of Rosh Hashanah. Do I compare it to other Yom Tovim? Do I compare it to Rosh Chodesh? Yeah, that's simple enough. Okay. So it's a debate. And you could imagine that Rabbeinu Yoina has the final word. You're going to paskin like Rabbeinu Yoina. Fine. Comes Rabbi Abba Pasvaler, 200 years ago. He's born in the early 1760s, passes away in the late 1830s. Mamish the same years pretty much as Rabbi Kiva Eger. And as great as he was, and he was a big guy, and he comes out with this psak, which is original, but highly problematic. What did Rabbi Abba say? The first night Rosh Hashanah, he's not talking about if you said the whole weekday Shemoneh Esrei. No, you daven Rosh Hashanah, but you missed HaMelech HaKadosh Zarkel HaKadosh. So he says, Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh. Just like Rosh Chodesh, if you miss Ya'aleh V'Yavaynu, because Rosh Chodesh really only begins by day, that's when Bezin's Mekadosh, so too Rosh Hashanah. Ba'arvit, Rak Ba'arvit. And the obvious question is, this logic of his is not so original. It goes back 500 years before him. Rabbeinu Yonah quoted other people saying it in regards to a slightly different case about doing the whole Shemoneh Esrei Shel Chol, but it's exact same logic, and Rabbeinu Yonah dismissed it. So what in the world is Rabbi Abba Pasvaler saying? You know, he wakes up 200 years ago and he came out with a psak, and he meant it for real. In fact, if you look at the Chaye Adam, Rabbi Avram Danziger, who was also from the same generation, he was actually very close with Rabbi Abba Pasvaler. Originally, Avram Danziger was a student of the Noide B'Yehuda, and in Prague, and then later he came to Vilna. He got to know the Vilna Gaon. He became a mechutin of the Vilna Gaon. His kid married the Vilna Gaon's grandchild. And originally Avram Danziger was a businessman. And he writes, the businessmen these days, they're only learning 3 hours a day. Nebuch. Look where Gullus has taken us. Anyhow, but at some point in his life, he had a misfortune financially, and he was a big scholar. He became a Rav. And he wrote the Sefer Chaye Adam. And Lubavitchers were not, very fond of the Sefer. He was a misnagid, but it's an important Sefer. In fact, J.B. Soloveitchik, friend of the Rebbe, said, if you want to learn halacha, you should learn the Chaye. You should learn Aruch HaShulchan. If you want to learn Psak halacha, you should learn Chaye Adam. If you want to get bottom line, learn Chaye Adam. If you want to get more of the background discussion, you should learn Aruch HaShulchan, which was written later. Aruch HaShulchan was closer to our times, also a Litvisha, and it's incredible work, a Shulchan Aruch type of work. But J.B. Soloveitchik said something to that point. Even if you're a halacha man, if you want to learn, you want to explore halacha, Aruch HaShulchan. You want to learn Psak, Chaye Adam. Mishnah Brura, no. The Mishnah Brura is becoming very popular as time goes by. However, we know that Moshe Feinstein. What?
Today's Yotzek, no?
Is it Mishnah Brura? Yeah, but okay, all right, okay. So today, all right. So the Moshe Feinstein used to paskin like the Aruch HaShulchan against the Mishnah Brura. The Aruch HaShulchan was older. The Aruch HaShulchan, or at least, Mishnah Brura lived a very long life, but the Aruch HaShulchan was considered, maybe the previous generation, and his psakim, apparently in Europe before the war, the Aruch HaShulchan's psakim were more binding and more popular than the Mishnah Brura, and even in America, Reb Moshe Feinstein definitely held that. Reb Moshe Feinstein apparently said the Mishnah Brura needed the haskam of the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan didn't need the haskam of the Mishnah Brura. That's what they quote that he said. So he, J.B. Soloveitchik, they were into the Aruch HaShulchan, but J.B. said the difference of the Aruch HaShulchan is to explore the halacha. You want the psak, Chaye Adam is the place to go. And Chaye Adam was very popular by the Litvishes, in Europe before the war. Now everyone learns Mishnah Brura, and as time goes by, it gets more and more popular. He's becoming the Chazon Ish, because the Chazon Ish said, that the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Kar, the Mishnah Brura, they're all considered the Sanhedrin HaGodol and the Lishkas HaGozis, and no one can argue on them. So those that follow the Chazon Ish, they have major emphasis on the Mishnah Brura.
1933.
Yeah, 1933, right. The Aruch HaShulchan passed away 1908 or something. Check it out, something like that. Anyhow, so the Chaye Adam was a good friend of Abba Pasvaler, and he quotes his friend's psak in the Chaye Adam. This actually publicized the psak. Rabbi Abba didn't. You don't have any sfar. What? Oh wait, okay. Rabbi Abba Pasvaler. We have chuvas from him, but I don't know if he put out any sfarim. But this psak is recorded for posterity by his friend the Chaye Adam, which was a classic in Europe before the war. Everyone learned it, and the Chaye Adam quotes it. He quotes it as he doesn't argue. He quotes it as halacha. If he quotes it, he doesn't argue. Why is he quoting it? It's halacha. So shortly after Reb Abba Pasvaler, there was a fellow known as Reb Chaim HaKoyen Rappaport. He was a great-grandson of a more famous Chaim Rappaport, more famous to Chassidim. The earlier Chaim Rappaport was a genius of a scholar who lived in Brod, and the Baal Shem Tov had much to do with him. He was originally a Misnagid, the El Tazeh, the shore in Brod. All those that were involved in the Klois, there was a special base medrash of elite learners and tzaddikim, and they were pious, fasting and everything, and the learning was through the roof over there. And the Baal Shem Tov actually met up with that Klois a number of times to defend himself, and many stories. But the head of the Klois, this Chaim HaKohen Rappaport, the Baal Shem Tov ultimately brought him in to become a chassid of his. Interesting. He was originally an antagonist against going to our Thursday night shir about Yonis and Eibeshitz, when Rabbi Yankiv Emden came out against Yonis and Eibeshitz in 1751, right when they were living around the corner from each other, right when Rabbi Yonis got the job in Germany in the cities of Ehu, of Altona, Hamburg, and Wandsbek. So Yankiv Emden came out with accusations, Shabsai Tzvi, etc. The ruckus, the storm, made its way to Poland, Galicia, to Ukraine today, where Brod is. And Reb Chaim HaKohen Rappaport also signed against Yonis and Eibeshitz. He signed against him, but later he changed his mind. Anyhow, so that was Chaim HaKohen, the first guy. The Baal Shem Tov gave him many missions. A remarkable scholar, and the Baal Shem Tov made a mission to bring his soul to Chassidus. So that fellow has a great-grandson, the guy we're talking about now, Chaim HaKohen Rappaport, who's in the times of the Mittler Rebbe. And he wrote a sefer called Mayim Chaim, Tshuvas Mayim Chaim. And in it, he quotes the din of Reb Abba. It's almost like a fresh din, it's like a couple of years before it came out. He quotes the din of Reb Abba. And he said it doesn't make any sense because of the Rabbeinu Yoinin number 2. Reb Chaim Rappaport says, I don't get it. The idea of Reb Abba that you compare Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Chodesh to say that at night, just like Rosh Chodesh, v'mis Ya'alav v'yoveh, not too bad, because the Kiddush HaChodesh happens by days. So too Rosh Hashanah. If you miss Hakel HaKodesh, if you miss HaMelech HaKodesh, it's nicht gefährlich. That's exactly the debate in number 2. Rabbeinu Yoina already said his opinion, and the L'chor Reb Abba is against the psak of Rabbeinu Yoina. Says if you daven a weekday Shemoneh Esrei for the night of Rosh Hashanah, you're not Yotze, you don't compare to Rosh Chodesh. You have to daven Rosh Hashanah. So that if you miss HaMelech HaKodesh, the same thing. So the Mayim Chaim wants to bury the psak of with respect, but he says it can't be. It must be that Reb Abba, it's definitely a chap that he came up with, and Taka Rabbeinu Yoina quotes people who had the same chap, and had the halacha been like them, then we would agree. If you could daven the weekday Shemoneh Esrei, then the same thing Rosh Hashanah, you miss HaMelech HaKodesh. But Rabbeinu Yoina says by the weekday it ain't going to work. You have to daven Shel Yom Tov. So then you can't miss HaMelech HaKodesh. That's the kasha of the Mayim Chaim. Who else had a problem with Reb Abba? The Beis Halevi, Reb Chaim Briska's father, the original J.B. Soloveitchik, Reb Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, who, by the way, he was once, Reb Chaim, it's a good story, listen to this. It was the night of Rosh Hashanah, and Reb Chaim Briska's father, the Beis Halevi, he's in the times of the Tzemach Tzedek, Reb Marash. It was the first night Rosh Hashanah, and right after Ma'ariv, he looks around in his shul, and he sees there's a Polish chassid in Lithuania. And the Beis Halevi calls out, Polish chassid, tell us something from the Baal Shem Tov. Zog epis from Baal Shem Tov. So the chassid said, no problem. Rosh Hashanah, by night, the davening is very short, right? We don't say much. One mizmor, l'davin mizmor la'Hashem ha'aretz u'maloya. Random. One zach that we say, it's like a random mizmor. So he said, the Baal Shem Tov explained like this. A melech b'chlal can never forgive on his covet. A melech can't be moichel on his covet. You sin against the king, he doesn't have the choice to be moichel. Why not? Why not? So there's a debate in the Rishonim. Some taina kosoim tosim alecha melech, that there's a mitzvah on the community to always have the fear of the king, and the mitzvah of the community doesn't allow the king to override his. That's what the Shittum Mekubetzes brings. But others, the Baal Shem Tov said, no, it's because the melech's honor is not his; it's the Eibishter's. Malchusa da'ara kei malchusa d'rekia. Malchus down here represents the Malchus in heaven. The king's honor is not his. It's not his to forgo. It's not his to forgo. Or but the Eibishter Alein, he's the balabas on his own covet. So a yid who sinned can ask the Eibishter for mechila. The Eibishter is a melech, he can't be meichel. That's a regular melech because he doesn't own his honor. The Eibishter does own his honor. So the Baal Shem Tov said, you come Rosh Hashanah, he's going to stand before the Eibishter. How are you going to ask the Eibishter, forgive me? The Eibishter is a melech. So right away when Rosh Hashanah begins, we say, Mi ze melech hakovet. Who is a king on his own honor? All regular kings are slaves to their honor. They're tied down to their covet. They're stuck. They can't break free from it. They're servants to their own honor. Who is a melech hakovet? Who is the only one who's a king on his own covet and therefore could dismiss his honor? Exactly. Hashem is Uzvigibur. Who melech hakovet selah? He's the only one, and that's why we say it. By the way, when the Beis Halevi was a young man, so this story was recorded by somebody who was there in the Beis Medrash. So that's how he got this word to the Baal Shem Tov, because the Beis Halevi prompted. He wasn't, when he turned around and prompted the guy for a word, he wasn't harassing him, He meant to with the emes. And Baruch Hashem, the guy had his ammunition on him. Imagine if he would have nothing to say. When the Beis Halevi was a young man, he was offered the Rabbanus. And in those days in Europe, Lithuania, when a new Rav comes to the pulpit and the first Shabbos he gives a drasha, it was expected for him to whop out like a big heter, to show his koyach of psak, show a big heter. So the Beis Halevi actually gets his job shortly before Rosh Hashanah. So the first Shabbos he's there, the whole city heard about this young man, a brilliant mind. The shul was packed. The Beis Halevi gets up, it's shash still. What's the big kula he's going to throw out? And he says, listen, it's coming close to Rosh Hashanah. I've studied the following sugya many times, and I feel confident to tell you. If anybody wants to fast on Rosh Hashanah, I can find a loophole for you. I can find a heter. This was a briske heter. They say the Aruch HaShulchan did a similar thing, and his heter was if a woman needs to go to mikveh during the 3 weeks or the 9 days, she can cut the hair that's going to be a chatzitza. That was the big heter. That was the big heter that he gave. Anyhow.
I mean, halacha is a fasting Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Oh. So here's a fascinating thing. So Rabbi Abba gave his psak. The Mayim Chaim said this against Rabbeinu Yoina. Comes the Beis Halevi, Chaim Briska's father. We just mentioned 2 stories of him. And he says that with all due respect, Rabbi Abba's psak is not only against Rabbeinu Yoina, it's even against the first Rishonim that Rabbeinu Yoina bring. In other words, Rabbi Abba's psak has nobody to stand on, to link to. And he says very simple. Those that the first opinions Rabbeinu Yoina quotes, what did they say? What did they say? If it's the first night Rosh Hashanah and you daven a weekday Shmoneh Esrei, you're Yotze. Just like Rosh Chodesh, you miss Ya'aleh v'Yaveh. But if you do Rosh Hashanah Shmoneh Esrei and you say Hakel HaKadosh, it's Tarti Desasri, it's contradictory. It's contradictory. Mimanavshech. Is it Rosh Hashanah or not? If you're going to say, well, it's Rosh Chodesh and that doesn't kick in till the morning, then how do you do Rosh Hashanah davening? Right? If you start do Rosh Hashanah davening in the middle of the week, what type of Shmoneh Esrei is that? there is a long debate if you accidentally throw in like a Ya'alav Yovi or Rosh Chodesh in middle a regular weekday. A big machlokes if a pasuk Shemon Esrei or not. But says the Beis Halevi, if you're taking the argument that it's still the weekday and that's why you didn't say HaMelech HaKadosh, so you got to say Yud Ches Brachas. How do you say Rosh Hashanah Shemon Esrei? Elamais Rosh Hashanah, where's your HaMelech HaKadosh? You can't have this Tarti Desasri. So he says the Beis Halevi, the psak of Rabbi Abla Fasvaler, is like nobody. Nobody would hold like that. It's impossible. It doesn't make sense. So look at number 3. Number 3 is a comment of the Mishnah Berurah. Guess today is his yard site, so we're learning it. And he quotes, so when he wrote the Mishnah Berurah, he wrote footnotes underneath the Sha'ar Tzion. And in number 3 he says the following. V'hinei b'chaye Adam, in the chaye Adam he brings from the Goin. Mareinu harav abele pasveler. She'im tov, someone erred Belel Rosh Hashanah, and V'lo Yomer HaMelech HaKadosh, she'ein sorch lachshi, doesn't have to go back. Just like if you make a mistake and you don't see Ya'alav Yovi Rosh Chodesh, she'ein sorch lachser. Machmas, why? Because she'ein mekadsh na chodesh b'layla. Like exactly like we presented before. V'lefi aniyas daiti, says the Mishnah Berurah, loyne here, it doesn't make sense. And he says the same time as the Beis Halevi, without quoting him, but the exact same kasha. The Zeh HaYeshayach, Rabbi Abla would make sense in the case of the Rishonim the Rabbeinu Yonah brings. If you did the weekday Shemon Esrei, Rakim HaYemispal Tfilas Chav did the weekday, and your argument would be, listen, Rosh Chodesh really only starts by days, Rosh Hashanah only starts by days, so I did the weekday. Ma'ashe'enkim Bozeh, but this guy by Rabbi Abla, he's davening Tfilas Yom Tov. So Mimanav Shech Ein HaYaitz, it doesn't make any sense. Either you can't do Yom Tov and Orkel HaKadosh. So says the Mishnah Berurah, maybe Rabbi Abba meant the following. And he says like this, V'ulai, maybe, this is a chap. Duhu Ma'iri, you know what Rabbi Abba is talking about? Shenizker Tekef Shesim Orkel HaKadosh. Rabbi Abba is talking about like this. You're davening the first night, Rosh Hashanah, you said Orkel HaKadosh, and after Kedei Dibur, after 5 seconds, you realize, oh yeah, what did I do? So comes Rabbi Abba and says, you know what you should do? Say Atachoinen. Do like the first shittas Rabbeinu Yonah bring. Do the weekday Shemon Esrei. So there's no tarti desasri, there's no self-contradiction. Ula didate sarch l'sayim b'shel chayil. What Rabbi Abba meant was not that you have a hodgepodge Shemon Esrei or Rosh Hashanah without HaMelech HaKadosh. If you missed HaMelech HaKadosh and you caught yourself before you continued, but after it's too late to return, you finish shel chayil. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but va'af pozet sarchin go, doesn't make sense, because even that in Talmid Rabbeinu Yonah mistapik, there's a suffix there, like we saw in number 2. Maybe you're yaitze b'shalchol b'di'eved. That's after the fact. But lechatchila, to tell the guy to continue the shalchol, zel lo mention, this we don't find. So the Mishnah Berurah's time is it wouldn't make sense to tell a guy lechatchila to daven. The whole machlokes is b'di'eved. So I've seen many people asking the Mishnah Berurah, this is b'di'eved. If he's going to go back, he's going to lose his first 3 brachas. Like this is already b'di'eved, perhaps. And b'chlal, how does the Mishnah, maybe talking about Abla would be right. Who said you have the right to go back and do Rosh Hashanah Shemon Esrei? You're going to be made, then you'll turn out the 3 brachas alavatala, even b'di'eved. Whereas if you continue Shel Chayil, once you do it, you can rely on the first opinion of Rabbeinu Yonah. So there are many who question what the Mishnah Berurah. No, l'ach k'dei dibur. Kol ha'brachot, gimel brachot rishonot nechshavot ka'achad. So
why it's not bachal, it's called bachal lebata?
Ma?
If you forgot and it's already achel dibur,
you have to tzarich lachzor.
No, but it's called bachal lebatala.
Can.
So it's better to do bachal lebatala and do the tefillah right.
Well, that's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying. That's what the Mishnah. The Mishnah Berurah obviously feels that it's better to do that, but it's not. The Mishnah Berurah says it's obvious that you would have to go back. I'm just pointing out, not so obvious. If you would pass like the first shittas of Rabbeinu Yonah, maybe Taka just finished the Shemon Esrei.
You can even mention Rosh Hashanah in the middle.
Yeah, you can throw in a Ya'alav, exactly. You can throw in a Ya'alav. No, but then you'll have a hodgepodge. Then you'll have the Akel HaKadosh with the other Tarti Desasri. Anyhow, so Al Kapanim, fine. So what do you see so far? The Poskim are not happily with Rabbi Abba. They're not happy. The Beis Halevi's not happy. The Maim Chaim's not happy. The Mishnah Berurah is not that. The Mishnah Berurah says the only thing I think he means is ABC, and even that doesn't make sense. So l'chayr is in hot water. Okay, so we come to number 4. What happened was there was a fellow named Reb Shlomo HaKoyen. He lived in Vilna. He was an Av Bezdin in Vilna after the Abba. He was famous, he and his brother, Reb Tzalel HaKoyen, and they wrote notes on what? Yeah, they wrote notes on Gemara. And Reb Shlomo HaKoyen of Vilna, he wrote the Binyan Shlomo. And he has a letter where he says, nobody understood what Reb Abba really meant. If you understood what he meant, you'll know he's right. And he says a beautiful thing. He says, all the questions we said are rubbish. The Mayim Chaim Shaila, that it only fits like the first opinion of Rabbeinu Yonah, rubbish. It fits like Rabbeinu Yonah. The Tarti, the Sastri of the Beis HaLevi, not a Shaila. And he says very simple. Rosh Hashanah Yom Tov starts the night of Rosh Hashanah. No question. Like Rabbeinu Yonah said, can't do malacha. Why do we say HaMelech HaKadosh? Is it because of Yom Tov? No. It's because the Eibush is judging the world. The Raya is, we say it, the whole Aseret Yemei Tshuva. It's nothing to do with Yom Tov. It has to do with Din. When does the Eibush judge? The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Ki choik liYisrael hu mishpat leLokei Yankiv. When does the Eibush judge? When does Bezdin Shalmaila convene to judge? Only when Bezdin Shalmata is Mekadosh the Chodesh, which is day. The judgment of the Eibishter when he sits in Kisei Din only begins by day. The Gemara learns it out. When the Yidden make it Yom Tov, make it Rosh Chodesh, that's when the judgment begins. The fact is, Ein Mekadsh Ela B'Yom. So the judgment aspect only starts by day. So says Reb Shlomo HaKoyen, it's so simple. Of course Rosh Hashanah starts at night full-fledged. And Rabbeinu Yonah is right. If you're going to do a weekday Shemoneh Esrei, the first night of Rosh Hashanah, you can't pull out the Rosh Chodesh card. No, it's Yom Tov. But if you daven the Yom Tov Shemoneh Esrei, and you said, Hakel HaKadosh Yoytze, because the Eibush is not yet Melech till the morning. So there's no Tarti Desasa, there's no contradiction like the Beis HaLevi had, no contradiction. It's Yom Tov, but it's not the time of judgment. Until the morning. No, till the morning. Yeah, till Neit Sachama. In fact, we're going to see that Moshe Feinstein has a whopper. Rabbi, he says if you daven Rosh Hashanah by day before Neit, you don't have to go back either. We'll see.
It's two different things. To be a melech and to judge is two different things. This melech.
No, the melech is Kisei. No, but the melech, of course, is over. We always say melech stock mishpat, but the title melech is given on Rosh Hashanah. Aseret Yemei Tshuva because it's Yoshev al Kisei Din. That's why we say melech. Lama omrim melech HaKadosh.
Yeah, but not only that. We mamlechin HaKadosh Baruch Hu on us, not just because he's sitting on Kisei Din.
No, so there's a Rashi Masechta Brachos where Moshe Feinstein is going to quote it that it's because of the judgment. It's because of the judgment. It's because of the din. So this is what Reb Shlomo, it's a gevaldik, it's a simple answer. It knocks off the shail of the Mayim Chaim, knocks off the shail of the Beis HaLevi, Shalom Al Yisrael. So look at number 4. Number 4 is from Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. In the Sefer Shmiras Shabbos Kilchasa, written by his student. It's a whopper. On Rosh Hashanah, besides from messing up davening, someone could also mess up his benching by not saying Ya'aleh V'Yaveh. Now, what's taka the din if someone doesn't say Ya'aleh V'Yaveh in Rosh Hashanah by eating by the meals? So the verse like this. We had a long shir last year if you're allowed to fast on Rosh Hashanah. The general rule is if you eat a meal that the day demands you to eat the meal, then you have to mention the day in benching. And if you don't, the benching doesn't count. So if on Shabbos you have to eat bread, and if you bench and you don't mention Shabbos in Ritzei, then it's the benching is flawed. So too on Yom Tov. Rosh Chodesh you can't fast, you don't have to eat bread. There's a minute to have a Suda, but you don't have to. And therefore Rosh Chodesh, if you miss Ya'aleh V'Yaveh in benching, it's okay. And so too Chol HaMoed Pesach, Chol HaMoed Sukkos. What about Rosh Hashanah? Some say you're allowed to fast Rosh Hashanah. Many of the Goyim are allowed to fast. So according to them, if you happen to wash and you missed Ya'aleh V'Yaveh, your benching's fine. Many hold you're not allowed to fast. So if you miss Ya'alav Yovim benching, you have to go back. So what do? So it's been a big discussion for many years. There was some poskim who said that since you don't know if you should go back or not, you don't go back. Because Minat Torah, you'll probably be Yotze anyways. It's only a Safek on a Rabban. Don't go back. Don't go back. The Alter Rebbe in the Siddur has a Hachra. The Alter Rebbe in his Siddur comes up with the following. A difference between Rosh Hashanah night and Rosh Hashanah day. Says the Alter Rebbe, by night, everyone agrees it's also to fast. Because your judgment's by day, so the logic of fasting is by day. That's when Metzitat we're shaking. By night, how could you fast? It's a regular Yom Tov. So Alter Rebbe says, by night, if you miss Ya'alav Yovim benching, you have to go back. By day, takanisht. Because according to some, you don't have to have a meal in the first place. So this Alter Rebbe is exact opposite of Rabbi Abba Pasvaler. Rabbi Abba Pasvaler wants to say the night of Rosh Hashanah is like the night of Rosh Chodesh. It's not really Rosh Hashanah.
Because don't judge it.
No. Well, the simple understanding of Rabbi Abba is Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh. Just like Rosh Chodesh, if you miss Ya'alav Yovi at night, you don't go back because Ein Mekadshin Ela B'Yom. So to Rosh Hashanah, he said, if you say Akel HaKadosh at night, you're okay, said Rabbi Abba. According to Rabbi Abba, then simply, the simple before we saw the Binyan Shlomo, the simple understanding, then by benching as well, if you miss Ya'alav Yovi at night, you wouldn't go back. Who said you have to eat? It's not really Rosh Hashanah yet. The Alter Rebbe says just the opposite. By night, benching is much more serious than by day. It's exact opposite.
Because by the day you can fast.
Yeah. So comes Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Let's read number 4. This is his student quoting him in Shmida Shabbos Kilchasa. Look, five words in number 4. The Belel. We quoted the Choshev Kohen before, and we also quoted again the Rabbi Yaakov Emden, the Eibish's controversy. No, yeah. Kagan, yeah. The Belel Rosh Hashanah also Lisanis L'Kuli Alma. Like the Alter Rebbe says, in the night of Rosh Hashanah, there's no debate, you can't fast. Look at Tehillah David and Simon Kuf Peiches and Kitzah Shulchan Aruch. V'shamati, this is the student Neubert who wrote Shmir Shabbos Kolchasa. I heard from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Shlita. When this was written, Shlomo Zalman was still alive. The Yitach, and it could be that just like by davening, the Chai Yodam writes in the name of the Goyin of Abel Pasvaler, that by Laila ein choizer by davening. Mipnei she'ein mekadsh chodesh b'Laila. The simple explanation of Reb Abba before Reb Shlomo HaKoyen turned on, the way everyone understood him was Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the month. It's like Rosh Chodesh, so it has the leniency of the nighttime. Rosh Chodesh by night, if you miss Ya'alav Yovi, it's okay, because Bezin doesn't proclaim Rosh Chodesh till daytime. So too Rosh Hashanah. If you miss HaMelech HaKadosh, it's okay. So too if you miss Ya'alav Yovi and benching. The Mishnah Brewer had a kasha we saw in number 3. The Mishnah Brewer's kasha of Mimonavshech, that is contradictory, Shaykh Rak by davening, not the Gabi Birchas Hamazon. You see the chap of Shlomo Zalman? What the Mishnah Brewer number 3, what was his kasha with Rabbi Abba? How could you daven Rosh Hashanah Shemona Esrei and say Akel HaKadosh, you're dancing 2 weddings at the same time? But by Birchas Hamazon, if you just miss Ya'alav Yova, you're not contradicting yourself. You just did a regular Birchas Hamazon. So it should work. It should work. So
would it be different if it was the second day?
We'll get to that in a moment. Says Reb Shlomo Zalman, the problem is that the Mayim Chaim's kasha. This whole Rabbi Abba only fits with the first opinion of Rabbeinu Yonah. Shuv Noideli, then I found out, says Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, Sherabim Tomu al Apsak Shel Agoyna. Now everyone has a problem from the Rabbeinu Yonah in Brachas. The Rabbeinu Yonah says, the Imloi Hiskish Shel Yom Tov Below Rosh Hashanah. If you don't mention Yom Tov at night, Sarich Lachser. We don't compare it to Rosh Chodesh, so then the whole thing's out anyhow. So if you paskin like, not like Rabbeinu Yonah, like the first opinion that you could do Shel Chol, could be compared to Rosh Chodesh, then maybe I could hear you could apply it to Birchas Hamazon too. Ulam, but then he quotes the Goyin Baal Shai's Binyan Shlomo, Kosav B'Hisofis and Simon Yud Ches, that no one understood what Rabbi Abba meant. L'Yashev, based on the Gemara Rosh Hashanah, Ein Bezin Shalmai L'Don and Elim Ken Kitchu Bezin Shalmata. The judgment doesn't start till day. Choik Yisrael hu, when the Yidden make it Yom Tov, which is by day, that's when the judgments. Oh, so then it won't apply to benching. It won't apply to benching. So if I care, benching will be more serious. V'lochen only for Amelech HaKadosh, which depends on judgment, that's when he paskins Einu Chayzer. Masha Enkin Linyan Tefillah, if you did the whole weekday Shemoneh Esrei, Rabbeinu Yonah would be right. Gam b'layla tzorich liyas rak shel Yom Tov. Ulefi ze nira, kivan that we hold b'layla asur lotzim b'Rosh Hashanah. Since we hold this asur to fast, you can't. Rabbi Abba won't help you over there. Mistaber makes sense, and also by Birchas Hamazon, if you forgot, you have to go back. This is Rabbi Shlomo Zalman's puzzle is putting together. So again, according to the Binyan Shloim, it's a whole new understanding. It's only by a Melech HaKadosh, because Punkt Hashem doesn't judge till the morning. As far as Yom Tov, it's complete Yom Tov the night before. Rabbeinu Yonah is right, if you did Shel Chol, it wouldn't work. And so too by Ya'aleh V'Yoveh. So Ya'aleh V'Yoveh would dafka be a problem. And by day would be more lenient, because you could throw in the opinions that allow you to fast. Okay, so far we have the standard understanding of Rabbi Abba, those poskim dismissed him. The Mayim Chaim, the Beis Halevi, even the Mishnah Berurah. The Binyan Shloimeh has a whole different understanding. All the questions fall off. Comes Reb Moshe Feinstein in a letter in number 5. And Reb Moshe holds like the Binyan Shloimeh. He doesn't quote him. Reb Moshe often doesn't quote from the Gdolei Achronim. And I don't know if you saw him. He didn't seem, regardless, he says, B'chlal. Reb Moshe wrote a letter to someone who asked for guidance on how to learn Gemara Be'iyun. He said, Gemara Rashi Tosfos. That's it. Anything else you learn is just to help understand Gemara Rashi Tosfos. Yeah. That was, he focused on the main sources, the Shulchan Aruch and the main Noise Kalim. But branching out to see what every Achron wrote, he didn't encourage maybe students starting off to do it. And in his tshuvas.
Mishnah was similar. He didn't make people only to... No.
He's quoting all... Well, okay. No, but in Moshe's letters, he deals with questions that the Gedolei Achronim touch upon, and he doesn't even mention them. I've seen many times. So people 100 years before him have already dealt with the issue, but he doesn't make any mention. And here's an example of it. Anyhow, but in number 5, either way, I don't mean that goes with any disrespect. This is just his style. Anyhow, but Reb Moshe over here paskins against the Mishnah Berurah. He goes like the Binyan Shloimeh, and he says Reb Abel is right. He says if the night of Rosh Hashanah you mix up Hakel HaKadosh, you're okay. That's what Moshe Feinstein's psak.
If the night of Rosh Hashanah you miss Hakel HaKadosh,
you miss HaMelech, you said Hakel HaKadosh, you're okay. Because the din only starts by day. So says Reb Moshe V'hanochem Lefinis Daiti, I believe that Vada, if you don't mention Yom Tov at night, the case of Rabbeinu Yonah is right. Rab Abla Pasvalu and the Chai Adam will hold like Rabbeinu Yonah. Shemachzirin, because it's Yom Tov. How could you do weekday? But if you mention Yom Tov, you say Melech HaKadosh, Bozeh Chidshu. Only there do we say you don't go back. V'atam, why? It's mamish word for word the Binyan Shloimeh. The same Gemara, Rosh Hashanah Daf Ches, we say Bezdin Shomayla doesn't judge unless Bezdin Shomata was Mekadosh to Chodesh. And therefore, since we don't do Kiddush Chodesh till day, Ein Nichnosen until tomorrow by day. Now, why do we say Amelech HaKadosh? Rashi writes in Brachas Daf Yud Beis, Rashi says it's because of judgment. You said it's because it's the season of Malchus, but Rashi says, B'yomim elu humarim achusay lishbait esoilam. It the Eibush the judges. V'im kein loy shaykh say only tomorrow shnichnasim ledin, and the next 10 days, even at night. But the first night of Rosh Hashanah, that Adayin lo nichnas ledin, because they weren't mekadosh to Chodesh, Adayin. Ein tzorich, says Reb Moshe even more. Be'emes, you should say Hakel HaKadosh. Everyone should be saying Hakel HaKadosh the first night of Rosh Hashanah. Hashem's not judging. Ein tzorich be'etzem to say Hamelech HaKadosh. It's only lechatchila. You know why we do it? Because we want all the tefillos of a day to be similar, uniform. Because why do we say Rosh Chodesh and why do we say Ya'aleh V'Yoveh the night of Rosh Chodesh if ein mekachin ela b'yom? K'dei shaloi l'shanis, not to change the night from day. That's only lechatchila. But v'loi lachzir b'shachach, not to bring you back if you forgot and didn't mention.
Like plug.
Yeah, loy plug. And so too Rosh Hashanah Arvis Melech HaKadosh. And he says a din mechudesh mamish. This is not mentioned by Rabbeinu Yonah. In other words, he's saying this has nothing to do with Rabbeinu Yonah's discussion in number 2. Everyone got it wrong. the Beis Halevi misunderstood them. The Beis Halevi took Rabbi Abba at the straightforward reading. This is a whole dray, right? To say this is what he meant when he didn't say this is a bit of a dray. But Ramosha and the Bin Shlomo feel that this is definitely the kavan of Rabbi Abba. V'hu nachon, says Ramosha, it's true. V'nimtzil adin, it's a fact. Rav Moshe here argues on the Mishnah Brura, which is a big deal, by the way, because I mentioned before that in America the Mishnah Brura became very, very big. Before the war in Europe, he wasn't. It was the Aruch HaShulchan.
Was with him.
The Aruch HaShulchan was much bigger. So, and Rav Moshe Feinstein, though, when he came to America, he remembered how it was in Europe, and he still felt the Aruch HaShulchan was.
The Aruch HaShulchan don't need escape from.
That Rav Moshe said that. Yeah.
He said it. But the truth today, most of the people learn.
But over here, now here, why should the halacha be the Mishnah Brura over Aruch HaShulchan?
That's a good
because he died later. Okay, Basra, he's later.
Because
well,
why?
Rav Moshe's Basra. In other words, like what? Who's greater, the Mishnah Brura or the Aruch HaShulchan? Rav Moshe said very clearly that he felt that in learning it was the Aruch HaShulchan. In fact, there were others. There were the Reb Henkin. There were other big Rabbanim who said that Mishnah Brura, as great as he was, a big Rav said he was too much of a tzaddik, therefore he's too machmir, and therefore his psakim are not universal.
Who machmir too?
The Mishnah Brura. There were people who said, big people who said that the Mishnah Brura, but over the last number of decades, has become very popular because of all the Chafetz Chaim yeshivas.
Because of Chazon Ish.
Yeah, the Chazon Ish. Yeah. Well, since even the Chassidim,
what is the Chadushin about them?
No, the Chazon Ish said he put the Mishnah Brura together with the Groiser Shulchan Aruch that whatever he says, it's like coming from the Sanhedrin and the Lishkas Hagazos and the Beis Hamikdash, which is a very weighty expression. By the way, by Lubavitch, there's a whole separate story. There are times where the Mishnah Brura quotes verbatim from the Alter Rebbe without quoting his name.
Again.
The Mishnah Brura quotes milah b'milah from the Alter Rebbe with explanation without quoting his name.
Like here?
I heard from Reb Asher Weiss, a big guy in Eretz Yisrael, so he had a big Talmud that was here, and we had a whole thing by the Pesach Matzahs. So I had a whole discussion with him. He told me what he heard from Asher Weiss, who's one of the biggest poskim today. Asher Weiss believes that for the Mishnah Brura assumed everyone knew the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and therefore everyone would notice with a glance that this is Alter Rebbe. He didn't have to say where it came from.
But he mentioned other rabbis in the.
No, he often mentions Alter Rebbe too for a psak, but sometimes when he just quotes a couple lines as an explanation, Asher Weiss time is the Mishnah Brura didn't have to mention because he felt everyone would know. What plagiarism? Everyone knows it's from the Alter Rebbe. Which is
interesting.
That's okay. It was nice to hear that. We'll say it on his yard side. We'll say that. Fine, weiter. Anyhow, so says Reb Moshe, he argues in the Mishnah Brura. So Rabbonim, many Litvish Rabbonim, this comes up. I want to tell you, I've seen many Litvish talk about this because it happens every Rosh Hashanah. First night, people make a mistake. The new year has just begun, and boom.
The Ashkenazim go by the Rama, no?
Yeah, Haramal lo medaber.
What's the psak for that?
לא מדבר על זה.
הרמ"א doesn't begin if somebody make a mistake in the davening or Rosh Hashanah.
No. בכלל, he said בכלל if you miss. In Shulchan Aruch katuv בכלל if you miss Akel HaKodesh. This, the shail of night of Rosh Hashanah, לא מדברים על זה. Says Reb Moshe, what about the second night of Rosh Hashanah? He says, Mistaber, you should go back. Because it's like it's part of because it's Chila Hadin and it's Aseret Yimei Tshuva.
Once you start on
exactly that's part of the problem. But Reb Moshe throws in a reason. Ach Efshur could be if we're going to tell you to go back on the second day, it's a zilzul for Yom Tov Sheni because it proved it's not Yom Tov. This is a very interesting svara. If you're going to go back on the second night, why are you going back? Because Rosh Hashanah was already yesterday. What do you mean? Tonight's Rosh Hashanah. You have to tell them, don't go back in order to treat this as the first night. We treat each one as a suffix. If you're going to say you have to go back because we're already into the Aseret Yimei Tshuva, that means because it's already the second day, that means not Yom Tov, it's a zilzul. I love it. Avali says, Yoiser Noited makes more sense that an uncommon thing, we don't say you're going to embarrass Yom Tov, and therefore you should go back. But the Chai Adam who brings Reb Abba Fasvaler doesn't distinguish. So he's not sure. Aval Hanach and go to the left side.
How many words are we want to find out if this is a...
Ulamasha Biarti, he says a whopping Chiddush. If the first day Rosh Hashanah you daven before sunrise, Shmoneh Esrei l'chatchila meant to be sunrise. Yeruchim Shomesh. But if you daven from Alois, you're Yotzer. When does the judgment begin in heaven? Sunrise. Because Bezdin's only meant to sanctify the new moon after sunrise. If Bezdin does it from dawn, it works. That's b'di'evid. But the Bezdin in heaven waits till sunrise. So if you daven Rosh Hashanah Shachris and you do Shmoneh Esrei before sunrise, you say Kel HaKadosh, Rabbi says you're good because the judgment hasn't begun. It's a whopper. Well, the Marsha B'yarati Nimsa, if you daven Shachar Rosh Hashanah before sunrise and you forgot Sam HaKadosh, Lo Yachzer. But what about Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh, if you daven Shachris Rosh Chodesh before sunrise, you have to go back if you miss Ya'alav Yavai.
If you daven
Rosh Chodesh Shachris Lifnei Neitz HaChama, and you miss Ya'alav Yavai, you have to go back. Why? Because Bezdin down here, if they would have sanctified from Alois, it works. But Bezdin in heaven don't make mistakes. Deloy Domel Rosh Chodesh, they're Chodesh because B'di'evet im Kitchu after Alois HaShachar before Neitz it works. But since L'chatchila you need Mekadosh after Neitz, like anything which is daytime, or he throws in Vada Mestama they never did before sunrise. I would say something else. But he said, Mamela, Bezdin in heaven would not come to judge till after sunrise. Which would mean if you daven before sunrise, it's not yet the time of judgment. You're good with Hakel HaKadosh. Al Mikol Makim says, Mistaber, you should go back. Imagine the halacha would be on the day of Rosh Hashanah, it depends which minyan you davened with. Yeah. So he says it makes sense to make a general rule, but it's not sure. Fascinating. So you have this whole idea. Now, many Litvish Rabbonim quote Reb Moshe on this. Many of them go with the Mishnah Berurah. So what do you do, Lamaisa? It's mam's a big problem. You say, if you would have Epis only Reb Shlomo Kohen of Vilna who gave out an interesting pshat for the Ba'abala, fine. Everyone else argues. But Reb Moshe, the Rav of America, he takes it on, and he says no. He's for sure. He's not shaky about it. By day he's shaky. Second night is not sure. The first night, fact, you don't go back. There's a mime of the Frierdiker Rebbe in number 6. The Alter Rebbe in Igeres HaKodesh in the 14th letter says that Rosh Hashanah, as soon as Rosh Hashanah begins, the Chayas of the world from the previous year ascends to heaven. And new Chayas doesn't descend till the next day. You blow shofar.
Again?
The Chiyut Shel Olam, ze mistalek בראש השנה כשנכנס החג. וזה לא חוזר, הקדוש ברוך הוא לא נותן חיות חדשה עד למחר כשתוקן שופר.
That's not when...
So how does the world exist for that time being? So this is the mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe in Tov Shin Gimel. V'hina, he says like this, Belel Rosh Hashanah, the night of Rosh Hashanah, it's Aliyas HaMalchus. Malchus, where the world gets its chayes from, ascends. The Spheres HaMalchus goes above, B'bchinas Atzmis Ein Sof, into the essence of the Eibishter. It ascends. Like it says, Tikul B'chodesh Shofar B'kesa, it conceals. The B'chinas Malchus is B'kisui, it's concealed. The Hester. V'hainu shemistateres, it's concealed in the Helam Atzmi, in the central concealment of the Eibishter himself. But he says the Aliyah is that the Pnimius of Malchus Oila L'mayla. Because the Chere Eina Muvan Eichu Kim Rosh Hashanah. How does the world exist on Rosh Hashanah? Till Tchiyah Shofar. What's going on? So he says, Dihine Kol Chayis V'Kiyum Oilam comes from Malchus. Malchus Kol Elamim. The Chol Elamim Kiyumim is from Malchus, but if it's concealed and it ascends, so how are we getting energy? So Kasher Chasheichel Lel Rosh Hashanah, when night hits, was first Malchus B'Zemaila. Eichu Kiyum, how does the world exist? Ach, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Fiz Dezeh Mashim Istalek is Bechinis Pnimius. The Chitzonius of Malchus doesn't go anywhere. And the world receives its chayas from chitzonius of Malchus. This is the answer to the Frierdiker Rebbe. There's still an external level of energy which remains.
It's something nice what I said yesterday.
Right.
For the Hashem, it doesn't. Is here always everywhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, now this is Hashem's. This is the hachayus. This is ha'or shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, ha'or, hapanim shelo, ha'or shelo. So you wonder like this. Rabbi Abba, the Binyan Shlomo, Rabbi Moshe are all saying that The Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah begins at night, but like the Melech, the Mishpat, it all starts by day. So from night to day, what is it? It's like just a Yom Tov. That's why you can't fast. Just a Yom Tov. Just a Yom Tov. But you wonder, in Chassidus, no, at night, the whole world is getting chayas from the external level of Malchus. The inner level of Malchus has gone up. You wonder if it's not a time to speak about Hamelech. If the Pnimius HaMalchus is ascending to heaven, Rashi Taka says in Brachas, Melech is because of judgment. And even if Melech is because Mamlichim, but Ech Mamlichim Oisei B'Tkiyah Shofar. That's also by day. But if Melech has to do with what's going on in Pnimius and Yonim, that there's a new Malchus being cooked up over here because... So then it happens at night. It happens at night.
The tefillah is you build something for the Melech, not only the Tkiyat Shofar.
Yeah, no, but Bameh B'Shofar.
But the Ur isn't here. I mean, you can make the argument for less.
You could say Fakir. You could say since the
I mean, the Ur is here. This is like it's almost
right.
Like,
He could say Fakir that you almost shouldn't call him Hamelech Hakodesh because he hasn't decided if he wants to be a king again.
Or he hasn't given us his.
Well, that's the word. We try to awaken by the Eibush the desire for kingship, and it happens really b'shofar. So it's almost like Rabbi Moshe said. Really, you shouldn't even say Hamelech Hakodesh at night. It's almost inappropriate to say Hamelech Hakodesh. But on the other hand, we're still living from the chitzonius of Hashem's Malchus. Maybe that's why we say it.
Right.
So maybe you could you could flip it in many ways. But maybe lechatchila you should say it because we're still getting from the chitzonius of Malchus. But if you don't say it, you're good. You're good because ultimately, the Prince Malchus has ascended to heaven. The Eibusha hasn't decided. So then, this would be a boost to the Moshe and to. But on the other hand,
you need all the
on the other hand, my first inkling was that Fakir would not work with them. When you say Hamelech HaKodesh, you're not just describing Hashem as a king. That's how we're asking the Eibusha to be king. You're dafka asking when the Pnimius HaMalchus leaves and the world is teetering on Chitzonius HaMalchus. That's when you're begging the Eibusha. We need it back. So if you're describing the Eibusha, it happens by day. But if it's a request, then Fakir that night perhaps is the most crucial.
The first three brachas are not bakashos, no?
Not officially, but ultimately, you say Roifei Cholim, you say
the first one. Bachod.
They're both. When you praise somebody, you're ultimately eliciting their help as well. They want to help you. When you praise the Eibishter's,
it's a chana for the.
No. It's a gam. When you say the Eibishter's Soimech Lev V'Roifei Chol Matir Asurim, that awakens in heaven. The Eibishter's taka going to be Matir Asurim. It's both. You're not officially being mavakish, but when you praise. Anyhow, so I think this obviously plays a pivotal role, but you could see how you could flip it both ways. Anyhow, Ma'aser B'Poyel, we could ask, I don't know, this Shaila comes up. What do you tell people to do on the first night of Rosh Hashanah if you say...
What the Alter Rebbe says...
Alter Rebbe discusses Ya'aleh V'Yaveh about fasting.
Yeah.
This issue he doesn't get into. He doesn't because it doesn't mean Alter Rebbe didn't think of it. When the Alter Rebbe wrote a Shulchan Aruch, his hands were tied. Yeah, they don't talk about it.
The Psak of Rabbi came out after the Alter Rebbe.
Yeah, after. Exactly. Yeah.
Why was the Alter Rebbe's hands tied?
When the Alter Rebbe wrote Shulchan Aruch, the mission and that he was given was to take the Shulchan Aruch and the main commentators, the Noisei Kelim, and make a seder, make an order and decide. But he can't quote from random sources not quoted. I actually have a whole theory about this. I had a big debate with Rabbi Shapiro and anyone that I mentioned this to, but my gut still tells me it's true.
You're the maverick.
That is that if the Magen Avraham says a psak, and none of the big poskim 350 years ago argued, the Alter Rebbe has to quote the psak. He has no choice. Unless a mamish doesn't make sense. And sometimes Alter Rebbe Kuntras Achron, I didn't quote it because, but otherwise he's going to quote. Okay, 100 years later, let's say Rabbi Kiva Eger, the Chassam Sofer, all the big people come out against this psak of the Magen Avram. Are we still bound to the Alter Rebbe's psak? So my gut tells me no, because it's not the Alter Rebbe's psak. The Alter Rebbe had to write it, because the Magen Avram said it, and no one at that time said different. Let's say Hilchas Chanukah, where we don't have the Alter Rebbe. If the Magen Avram says something, and then 100 years later, 5 of the big Achronim disagree, we're probably not going to go with them. But I could tell you, if we would have the Alter Rebbe, you could be sure he would have quoted the Magen Avram. It was burnt. But you could be sure he would have quoted it.
That's right.
But who are we kidding? We know he would have. 99% chance he would have quoted it.
You said this in the show before.
I have.
This?
So,
Yeah.
nobody agrees with me on this. I had the Torah's Chesed was a Shneur Zalman of Lublin, Shneur Zalman Fradkin of Lublin, was a Lubavitcher Chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek. Mamash, a brilliant scholar. The Frierdiker Rebbe said he was brilliant not only in his times, but even compared to numerous generations before him. And he has times where he argues on the Alter Rebbe. And it's at least the cases that I saw are cases where the Alter Rebbe quoted a din from the Magen Avram.
So he wasn't arguing on the argument.
That's how I feel.
Brought down. This
Exactly.
person, and that's it.
Yeah. So
Are
it's
there
not.
other later people who agree with him? Meaning, are there other Achronim that agree with him?
The Torah's Chesed on that particular issue was about 8 of Tafshilin. I don't know I didn't. But
That's a whopper.
I told Shapiro he almost wanted to fire me when he heard this. but I think I listen. When the Alter Rebbe wrote his Siddur, his hands weren't tied. The Maggid of Mezrich gave the Alter Rebbe a very specific mission. When the Alter Rebbe wrote his Siddur, his hands weren't tied. So Alter Rebbe, all of a sudden, he the Shois Manius of the day, the 12 hours, is it from dawn till tzeis or from sunrise to sunset? In the Shulchan Aruch, he goes with the Magen Avram, who goes like the Trumas Hadeshin. It's from dawn till tzeis. In the Siddur, he goes like the Levush. But in the Shulchan Aruch, it wasn't. You can't pick the Levush against Magen Avram. That was against the rules, so to speak. When does Bein Hashmoshes begin? In the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe goes like Rabbeinu Tam, as did everybody then. That it's only almost an hour after our sundown, roughly, when Bein Hashmoshes begins. In the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe tears this pshat apart, and he goes like what's known as the Go'onim. As soon as the sun drops below the horizon, Bein Hashmoshes begins. And the Alter Rebbe writes in a letter printed in the Siddur that the pshat of Rabbeinu Tam is so difficult to accept. The Alter Rebbe is neged hachush; it's against our whole experience. So my time is, didn't the Alter Rebbe feel that when he was 20, 30 years old? But when he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, he didn't have a breira. He could not start quoting a random opinion.
There's no chance that he thought that when he was 20 years old, and then
it can't be, because he writes in the letter it's neged hachush. It's so the Rabbeinu Tam's opinion is so again. So then the Alter Rebbe would have noticed. To me, the Alter Rebbe knew that when he was younger, but he had no choice. He couldn't. When he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, he couldn't quote a random opinion brought in the Shulchan Aruch. In the Siddur, he can.
So then you have a huge.
Anyhow, so my point is, Lagabe, this for sure, when the Alter Rebbe doesn't talk about it, that's because no one. It doesn't mean the Alter Rebbe doesn't agree to the Babala, but the Alter Rebbe is not going to discuss a new din that no one before him mentioned. So what do you do, Lamaisa? So I know some Litvishes who are full-fledged Mishnah Berurah, they say you go back. The first night you go back. Then, students of the Moshe say, no, the Moshe says you don't. And then you have many others who scratch their heads and say, well, I don't know what to do. So they don't go back because you don't know. But anyhow, it remains a very interesting dilemma.
I just want to say it was worth